On December 1st, Ripple secured a license in Singapore that everyone's celebrating, but no one fully understands. Because this isn't about XRP's price, this is about Wall Street betting a $500 million that Ripple just become the infrastructure for institutional crypto payments in the world's fastest growing financial hub. Let's talk about this a little bit more deeply. The $500 million Fortress and Citizen connection, no one's really linking here. Here's the part that people might be missing. 1 month before this Singapore license, on November 5th, Ripple closed a $500 million investment at a $40 billion valuation, led by Fortress and Citadel Securities. You know, that timing, it's not a coincidence. Wall Street doesn't just throw a $500 million at anything without regulatory certainty. Fortress and Citadel knew this Singapore license was coming. They had to know. Here's the kicker. Bloomberg just revealed those investors had negotiated a guaranteed return provisions. They're betting on Ripple, the company, not on XRP volatility. They want infrastructure exposure with downside protection. This license is the regulatory certainty that they paid for. Singapore's MAS is one of the most respected regulators globally. Getting this expanded approval means that Ripple can now offer end-to-end payment services from collection, custody, conversion, and payout, all under one regulatory umbrella. Now think about it. Ripple now has 75 plus regulatory licenses worldwide. That's more than any crypto company. This isn't some startup play anymore. This is institutionalization at its finest. So let's dive into this MPI license just a little bit further. The headlines say Ripple can expand payment services. Let's break that down into what that actually means. The MPI license in Singapore requires a 250,000 minimum capital. They also have to pass some strict compliance standards. Only a handful of firms, I think less than 20, Coinbase is one of them, Crypto.com has one, but Ripple is now expanded. Here's what expanded scope really means. Ripple can now handle digital payment tokens, that's XRP and RLUSD for cross-border settlements, on and off ramps for institutions, that's huge, and a single onboarding for banks and fintechs. It still gets better. Competitors like Coinbase have to partner with multiple service providers for custody, swapping, and payout. Ripple can now do all of those things in-house under one regulatory license. If that's not operational efficiency that banks care about, I don't know what is. Monica Long, Ripple's president, said that the expanded license strengthens their ability to invest in Singapore, build the infrastructure financial institutions need to move money efficiently, quickly, and safely. Translation: banks are the customer, not retail traders. Let's talk a little bit about RLUSD. Basically, this is a bank settlement tool. Everyone keeps mentioning RLUSD in the headlines, but almost no one explains really what it is, why it matters. Let's fix that. RLUSD is Ripple's dollar-backed stablecoin. It was launched specifically for institutional payment and settlement. It's not competing with Tether, USDC, or anything of that nature for DeFi trading. It's designed to be a bank-to-bank settlement token. Now, here's why it all matters. When a bank in Singapore needs to send money to a bank in Brazil, they traditionally would use SWIFT, which takes about 3 to 5 days, and it costs about 5% in fees. With Ripple's system, they can convert fiat to RLUSD, that settles in minutes, and then convert back to the local currency, all compliant, regulated, and audible. RLUSD already got the approval from Abu Dhabi in November. Now, Singapore. Do you see how that's building? These aren't crypto exchanges, these are banking hubs. Ripple is building a regulated stablecoin settlement network that traditional finance can actually use. That's real utility. Now, think about this. The Asia Pacific on chain activity is up almost 70% year over year, according to Ripple's VP of the APAC region. Singapore sits at the center of this. This license means that banks can use RLUSD for settlement without holding crypto themselves. Ripple handles that infrastructure. Lastly, here's a geopolitical angle that not many people are connecting. Singapore is in a race with Hong Kong and Dubai to become Asia's crypto capital. And Singapore just gave Ripple a massive advantage. In October of 2025, Singapore's MAS delayed Basel-style crypto banking rules from 2026 to 2027. Hong Kong is implementing those same rules in 2026. So what does this mean? Singapore has a 1-year regulatory advantage for crypto innovation. Ripple's timing could not have been perfect. They got this expanded license right as Singapore opened that window. Meanwhile, Hong Kong banks will face stricter capital requirements and risk-weighted models a full year earlier. Dubai is also competing, but Singapore has something neither Hong Kong nor Dubai can match, right? The MAS global reputation. When institutions see Singapore MAS approved, they trust it. That's why Ripple chose Singapore as their APAC headquarters back in 2017. So here's what we think is the play. Ripple is using 2025 to 2027 to build market share with banks and fintechs in Singapore, then expanding that infrastructure across Southwest Asia before competitors face stricter rules. That's what we call regulatory arbitrage at the institutional level. XRP's spot ETF has hit 1 billion in inflows as of December 2025. The CME XRP futures hit a record 9,000 contracts in October alone. That's institutional money. That's not retail Robinhood traders. But here's the problem those institutions face. Where do you actually use XRP? You can't just hold it in an ETF. Institutions need regulated on-ramps, off-ramps, payment rails to deploy their capital. And that's what the Singapore license enables. Ripple now has the regulatory approval to offer those services to the same institutions buying XRP ETFs and futures. It's an infrastructure layer connecting Wall Street capital to real-world payment flows. The XRP ETF inflows are meaningless without regulatory infrastructure to deploy that capital. Singapore's MPI license gives Ripple the regulatory approval to be that infrastructure, and institutions are lining up. I hope you guys enjoy. Until next time, take care.